Hey guys, it is 100 days away from the midterm elections in November, and to celebrate that, we are going to go ahead and look at our 2018 Senate election prediction, and it's going to be a lot more in-depth than we've done in previous videos. We're going to go ahead, first of all, and take a look at the current Senate map that we have now. We have 49 Democrats and 51 Republicans, and yes, I will also still be doing an August 1st prediction, but this one is just 100 days away, so I was saying, why not? The result will probably be the same unless something happens in the next 2 days and new opinion polling data comes out. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at our contested map. I have not filled in any seats because, again, I want to leave that up to going through the video. And then we're going to have a number of contested races to talk about. So we'll start off in the contested races. We're not going to do them just yet, but we're going to start off with Florida, go to Indiana, Missouri, then North Dakota, Arizona, Tennessee, Nevada, and then Montana. We are not going to focus a lot on Texas because right now Ted Cruz is ahead by around 9% in opinion polling data. The three Rust Belt states I may consider talking about. I do have them on another window that I could bring up because I just did a video on the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan governor and Senate election predictions, and I guess I analyzed the polls done by NBC News. If you want to go check that out, it's on my channel. But overall, we're going to be focusing on the main swing states that everyone talks about a lot that really will end up I guess I can't say that word right, but figuring out how the end of the 2018 Senate elections will be and who will have control come 2019. So 23 Democrats starting off with no 2018 election and 42 Republicans. So clearly the Republicans have the advantage. So we're going to start off by filling in those Republican seats just to show you what majority the Republicans would have just based off on filling in the safe seats that they have right now. So Texas, again, was a likely seat, but I'm not going to do a shaded region. It doesn't feel like we need to talk about it too much. There is a possibility that the Democrats could come back in opinion polling, but right now it seems like Ted Cruz is going to be that victor. And again, 100 days away from an election is not a lot of time to change the tides unless it's a presidential election or something drastic happens again. That's why it would have to be so drastic to actually make an impact. But 48 Republicans just filling in all those safe seats, meaning they only need 2 to take back or hold on or retain the majority in the United States Senate. Only 2 seats. The Democrats have 29 contested seats that they do have a possibility of winning because they do have a great possibility of winning all of these states that are currently not either red or blue, but there are safe states on the Democratic side that can't be ignored either. Virginia, more of a safe state than you might think. So right now I'm going to put the state of Virginia in the safe column for the Democrats. West Virginia, I don't really need to talk about along with Ohio. These 2 states themselves, West Virginia more than Ohio for some reason. Yes, West Virginia and Ohio do have mildly unpopular Democratic incumbents, but right now West Virginia, a new poll was taken. If Joe Manchin does vote in favor of Brett Kavanaugh, he wins his election by 8%. If he doesn't, he wins it by only 2%, and if they take that out factor completely, he wins by 8%. So keep that in mind. Even if he votes against the Republican, I guess, conservative nominee to the Supreme Court, Joe Manchin wins re-election. So that pretty much would be enough to solidify this race as safe, considering that he's probably going to vote yes for Brett Kavanaugh, considering that it's probably inevitable at this point for the Supreme Court. And we're also very far out from having a new president to appoint another nominee. So West Virginia right now, I'm going to leave in the safe Democratic column. Ohio right now, Sherrod Brown is pulling ahead of his Republican opponent, and a lot of you do agree with me on this one. Ohio is probably going to be a Democratic seat come 2019. New York still goes to the Democrats for obvious reasons. Vermont and Maine, not really close races whatsoever. New Mexico, that one shouldn't be close as well. Martin Heinrich is probably going to win re-election there. The Minnesota general election, again, I said I would talk about it, but again, right now I see that one in the Democratic column. In Pennsylvania, a lot of you have been saying Pennsylvania is going to get closer come election season. I'm not seeing it. Right now, again, we are 100 days away. Yes, it's around 3 months for things to happen, but again, Pennsylvania has had a consistent leader in all the opinion polls, and none of them show the Republicans ahead, whether it's the governor elections or the House elections or the Senate elections. All of them show a favorite for the Democratic Party. So we'll start off. Actually, let's see if we can start off with the Republicans. We'll start off with the Republican states from 2016 that are contested now. Not really contested, though, but should be contested. We're going to go ahead and take a look over in Minnesota, actually Wisconsin first, and then we'll go to Michigan, then Minnesota. But Wisconsin, let's see if we can find it here. So going down, this is just a new poll taken by NBC a couple days ago. If November's election, I don't know if you can read that or not, but I'll read it to you. If November's election for U.S. Senate in Wisconsin was held today, whom would you support if the candidates are? And then it's Tammy Baldwin and Kevin Nicholson. Tammy Baldwin wins that poll, I guess, is leading by 15%. That's enough for me to call that a safe race. She also leads 17% against another Republican opponent. And keep in mind for the governor elections, which really isn't relevant, but also something to note. Right now, the Democratic nominee, I guess presumably nominee because the nomination hasn't really fully occurred yet, but we have 41% for Scott Walker, the Republican incumbent, going for a third term. A lot of you know who he is. He ran for president before. And Tony Evers, I believe he is the Wisconsin school superintendent, like state superintendent, but he leads Scott Walker 54-41. So keep that in mind. That's enough for me to call that state a safe state for the political column. And if we also look at the approval rating of the president there, right now it is net negative 13%, which means that 13% more of people disapprove of the president than approve of him. Compare that to when we started off 2017 when President Trump was first elected. Boom. All that green is people who approve of him by a considerable amount. Then we go down to 2018. Well, I don't know why it's not sliding fully, but why aren't you sliding? It should be moving down. Okay, let's see if we can actually move it this time. Okay, guess not. Guess it doesn't want to move. All right, I guess we're going to get there. We're going to get there, guys. Don't worry. I think I just moved that page. I'll move it back. There we go. But July, there we go. Sorry, June 2017. Still around the same, some areas of the South, but over here in the Rust Belt, where Donald Trump really needs to focus on if he wants Republicans to have a shot there. They're probably not going to win, to be completely honest with you, looking at these new numbers that just came out. And then we'll go down to the Senate elections here. If the United States Senate election in Minnesota, I lied to you guys, sorry, we're going to Minnesota before Michigan. And if the United States Senate election in Minnesota was held today, who would you support? This is for the special election, not the general election. I've already called the general election for Amy Klobuchar. Tina Smith gets 49% of voters, and the Republican candidate gets 35%. That, again, is enough for me to put that in the safe column. So we're going to get rid of that. So we already have the Senate election up for the state of Michigan. If the United States Senate election in Michigan was held today, Debbie Stabenow wins that by 15%. So again, that's enough for me to safely rate that as a safe state. Again, looking at the opinion polling data, in a number of these states, Trump is not highly approved of either. And speaking of other states, Pennsylvania, -5. Looking at the, I guess, generic ballot poll, not looking too good for the Republican Party either. So that pretty much clears off what we need to see there. Now we're going to start off with the state of Florida and then lead off and finish off in the state of Montana. We have 8 contested races. These are the most contested races, in my opinion, based off the 2016 results. It's a little surprising not seeing West Virginia or Ohio here, but I've pretty much narrowed it down to 8 races. Again, we're starting off with Florida, and the candidates likely will be Rick Scott, the incumbent governor, whose approval rating is currently above 50%. Keep that in mind. He is an incumbent governor, but he also does have a history of underperforming in opinion polls. But again, not right now. I do see him winning this election, and a lot of you were saying on my previous video, I think Bill Nelson will win. I understand the argument that a Democrat typically would win in a swing state year, especially being an incumbent with a Democratic wave on their side. But right now, Florida is one of those tricky states. They did vote for the president back in 2016. We actually have the 2016 results, which is something I like to focus on. He won 49% to 47.82% for Hillary Clinton. This result was pretty good for the Republicans, considering that this was a Democratic state back in 2012. And looking at the Senate elections, I understand a lot of you want to say that somehow Bill Nelson is going to win. Yes, it does stand. It seems like he has a pretty good shot, maybe 47% chance of winning. But right now, I do see a very big possibility of a Rick Scott victory, especially since most opinion polling is hinting towards that. Bill Nelson originally led when Rick Scott was not highly approved of, but right now, it seems like Bill Nelson is probably going to lose this race, even in a Democratic wave year. So, as weird as it looks, Florida will be colored in red. If you guys can comment down below and show me other things that could point towards a Democratic victory, I will definitely rethink it, especially since we have a couple days before my next prediction, and then it'll be around a month or 2 weeks if I see anything drastic change, but around a month before the next prediction, I will have a lot of time to reanalyze a number of things that are happening right now. But as of today, as of where we stand right now, I see a Scott victory, especially probably by this margin as well, 0.8% for the Republican Party. So we're going to click off of that. We're going to get rid of those tabs, and we're going to move over into our next state, as I said before. So the state of Indiana doesn't have much opinion polling data that's been certified by Real Clear Politics. There are a number of outside online polls that show either Joe Donnelly or Mike Braun ahead, but the only one really taken by Real Clear Politics is the Gravis poll that shows Mike Braun ahead by 1%. And since we only have that type of election data, and we look at the 2016 results, it seems very likely that the Republican Party would win in this race. Again, this one I see as one of the more closer states. I actually see this state as being closer than the state of Florida only because there isn't really a known Republican candidate, but the Democratic incumbent isn't too popular either. And there isn't much opinion polling to go by. So when we're looking at that election, we're going to be completely left in the dark about it unless new polls come out. And right now, it seems like in Indiana, this race could go red. So we're going to come back to that one because I don't want to call the majority yet, but right now you should know that this race is leaning in the Republican column when it comes down to this prediction. So we'll come back to Indiana. But here's a state, actually, which is pretty interesting. The state of Missouri. Most people see this as a possibility for a Republican victory. We look at the 2016 results. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. There's a whole number of red counties and very few blue counties. And Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton here 56.77% to 38.14%. Much closer than in 2008, where John McCain won, I believe, by 2%. Or actually less than 2%, and he won by 2% in the state of Montana, which is another race we're actually going to talk about. Pretty interesting, to say the least. But Claire McCaskill currently leading in every opinion poll taken, except for the ones done by the Insider campaign. So essentially the ones that favor the Republicans, those are the only ones showing Josh Hawley winning in the Senate elections, which was something that I failed to recognize in previous predictions when I gave this race to the Republican Party. But when we're looking at this data, you can see that R by Remington's name, and Josh Hawley obviously would win when it comes down to polling mainly Republican areas or done by a Republican pollster, typically done in order to, just boost up a certain candidate, as we saw in the Austin Peterson poll that showed him ahead against Claire McCaskill by 19%, which was absolutely not true whatsoever. But Josh Hawley leading in all the polls that were taken by a Republican news source, not really news source, but Republican source, and Claire McCaskill leads in all other outside insider polling. So that sounds weird. All outside non-insider polling, and that gives her a spread of winning by 1% according to opinion polling. 4% by Missouri Scouts, a tie by Emerson, which seems more realistic than either candidate winning by 4%. Mason-Dixon, McCaskill +1, Gravis, McCaskill +2. So right now I see this race as going to the Democrats. Even with those 2016 results, Claire McCaskill, she is a fighter, number one. And also, she got very lucky again. Having Josh Hawley as her opponent is something that's going to be amazing for her. If it was another Republican, again, who could actually do extremely well and doesn't have any scandals whatsoever, this race would be rated as leaning or likely Republican. But right now, because of the Republican candidate that is probably going to win when it comes down to the primary and defeat Austin Peterson, we could definitely see a Claire McCaskill victory here. So Missouri goes to the Democratic Party. So actually, let's click off of that. Didn't mean to go to 2004 data. But now we are going to go ahead and take a look at the North Dakota polling. So the last poll taken that showed the Democrats ahead was taken in February 2018. The most recent poll was actually taken pretty recently. June 13th to June 15th shows Kevin Cramer, the sole representative from the state, ahead of Heidi Heitkamp by 4%. So the spread shows him ahead by 0.5%, and not much opinion polling was taken by this because Kevin Cramer didn't really announce until later on into the election season compared to other Republican candidates in other states. But right now, Claire McCaskill, I don't know why I confused them too. Heidi Heitkamp is definitely at a disadvantage when it comes down to opinion polling. And also, her approval rating isn't too high. It has dropped since the beginning of 2018, just as Joe Manchin's did. As I previously mentioned before, his approval rating went from around 64% down to 40, possibly 44. But still, it was a drastic drop. And also in North Dakota, it was also a drop. It wasn't as drastic considering that she wasn't highly approved of before. It was around 50%, but dropped down to below 50%. So keep that in mind. Right now, a number of these Democratic incumbents are in Republican states, so they are going to have to win over a number of Republican voters. You can no longer just win over Democratic and independent voters because those are not the majority, or even overcome the Republican majority in a number of these states. And it's not just independents. A lot of those independents are Republicans with an independent name only, and a lot of Democratic incumbents are going to have to focus on winning them over. So right now I see a Republican victory in the state of North Dakota, which I actually can finally finish off and show as a Republican victory, retaining the United States House Senate. Actually, I did a video about the House, but we're not talking about that now. The United States Senate goes to the Republican Party with 50, and of course, you see down here, it doesn't show VP, but it usually does. Of course, Mike Pence is the vice president. He's a Republican. He's going to give the majority for the Republicans. So since I've already called the majority, we can call Indiana for Mike Braun in this contested race. But now we're going to start going down into a little bit more of the races that typically skew towards the Democratic Party. We'll start off with Arizona, then go to Tennessee, then Nevada, and then Montana. So 4 races are left. The Republicans currently have a majority of 51 to 45 seats. So let's go ahead and get rid of the North Dakota Senate and North Dakota presidential election. I actually think I just cut out the Arizona polling data, but this is actually pretty interesting. Arizona is one of those races that really should be a Republican state. Arizona has typically been Republican in every election season until 2016, and now, if we look at the opinion polling, well, we'll start off with the Republican primary because this one is actually pretty contested. Joe Arpaio is probably not going to win, but you all know his name for negative reasons. Kelly Ward originally was the front runner. Now Martha McSally ahead by 9.8% when it comes over all other, potential nominees for the Republican Party. Right now, Kristen Sinema leads Martha McSally by 7.4% in the state of Arizona. Okay, it gets worse against Kelly Ward, 10.8%, and against Joe Arpaio, she leads 22.8% over him. So keep that in mind when we're looking at this data. The Arizona Senate race right now is rated as a toss-up seat, but right now I'm actually going to land the state in the Democratic column. So this is the first flip from red to blue, after Florida, North Dakota, and Indiana have all flipped from blue to red. So right now Arizona we see as going into the Democratic column by a narrow margin, and also if we look at the 2016 results, Donald Trump got less than 50% of the vote here. Hillary Clinton got 45.56%. Not necessarily the best for the Democrats, but let's go ahead and take a look at 2012. Mitt Romney got 53.48% of the vote, and Barack Obama got 44.45% of the vote. Hillary Clinton inched up, and Donald Trump dropped down a lot. And turnout, yes, was down, but also turnout amongst immigrants was also up in the Sun Belt. And also, Arizona right now, the opinion polling and a number of other things, especially with a very not really approved of incumbent Republican retiring, the factor of the incumbency is gone. And also, the Republican Party isn't doing too well when it comes down to presidential elections here either. The next state we're going to focus on is the state of Tennessee. Marsha Blackburn, the Republican nominee, and Phil Bredesen, the Democratic nominee. He's a former governor. He left office with higher than a 70% approval rating. He won every single county in his re-election bid in the state of Tennessee. One of the more Republican states, a part of the South, somehow had a Democratic governor who was elected 2 times, and also is going into the Senate election leading in opinion polls over Marsha Blackburn. Leading by 4.5% according to the Real Clear Politics average, leading by 6% according to Emerson, 3% according to Mason-Dixon. Right now, Tennessee, with a retiring Republican incumbent, the factor of the incumbency is gone. The Republican Party, yes, is approved of here, but also, right now we see Tennessee narrowly landing in the Democratic column, which is also something, it's an interesting sight, especially looking at the 2016 results, where Donald Trump won here by I believe 35%, I guess, or 36% because it was 60.72 to 34.72. That's pretty interesting. But also, if you look at the county results, look at all that red. Every one of those Republican counties was blue in 2006 in Phil Bredesen's re-election bid. Keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the Nevada Senate race here. The opinion polling data right now shows Jackie Rosen ahead of Dean Heller by 1.5%. The most recent poll taken shows her ahead by 4%. And the most recent poll that shows the Republicans ahead was taken back in April of 2018. So right now, Nevada is one of those states that actually voted for Hillary Clinton back in 2016. She was the victor, even though Donald Trump won in the Rust Belt. And she won by not really considerable margin, but she still won nonetheless. And margins don't always matter when it comes down to Senate elections. The presidential election doesn't really have a very big impact on the Senate elections, but it also goes to show that this is still a Democratic state. The Donald Trump approval rating here, I believe, around 39% right now, but also the Democrats have a real shot at winning in the state of Nevada. Dean Heller is one of the most unpopular Republican senators in the United States, probably one of the most unpopular senators in total from the Democratic and Republican Party, but right now I see Nevada as going into the Democratic column, giving the Democrats 48 seats. So the final state I said I would talk about was the state of Montana. So first of all, we're going to look at the Montana Montana presidential election race, which gave Donald Trump the victory over Hillary Clinton, 56.2% to 35.7%. So I guess you could say a 20% win for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. and of course Gary Johnson, but he wasn't a main factor in that election. But the last poll taken shows Jon Tester ahead by 3%, and that was taken by a Republican source, and Jon Tester was still able to beat Matt Rosendale. The poll taken before that was done by Gravis that shows him ahead by 8%, which seems a little bit more realistic based off their rating done by Real Clear Politics and a number of other pollsters that show this race is actually leaning in the Democratic column. And also this opinion polling data backs it up as well, and the approval rating polls back this up as well for Senator Jon Tester. So we're going to finish off this video by giving Montana to the Democrats. So that finishes off our map at 49 Democrats and 51 Republicans. We look at the 2019 Senate, we have 51 Republicans and 49 Democrats, seeing a little bit more red in states like Indiana and Florida, but also seeing a little bit more blue in Arizona and Nevada. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.